Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey through 10 of the biggest, most world-altering battles in human history. Now, usually when people talk about these massive turning points, they do it with a lot of dramatic music, intense sound effects, and maps covered in aggressive red and blue arrows. But since you are probably tucked into bed, or maybe just looking to turn the background noise of the modern world down to a gentle, sleepy frequency, we are going to take a very different path. We aren't going to focus on the glorious strategies or the heroic charges. Instead, we are going to wander through the deep confusion, the absolute logistical nightmares, and the profoundly weird personal lives of the elites and generals who found themselves running these historic disasters. Because as it turns out, having the fate of Western civilization resting on your shoulders doesn't stop you from having a massive emotional meltdown because your favorite breakfast pastry was cold, or from making tactical decisions based entirely on a bad dream you had 3 days prior. So go ahead and dim your lights, pull your blankets up a bit higher, and let the historical chaos wash over you in a perfectly flat, comforting monotone. Let's begin our journey by floating all the way back to the year 490 BCE, to a flat, marshy plain about 26 miles outside of Athens. We are looking, of course, at the Battle of Marathon. This is the moment where the massive, seemingly unstoppable Persian Empire decided to teach the bickering city-states of Greece a lesson in humility. The Persian emperor at the time was Darius the Great, a man who possessed an empire that stretched from Egypt all the way to India. Darius was so incredibly offended that the tiny city of Athens had supported a minor rebellion against him that he reportedly hired a servant whose entire job was to stand behind him at dinner every night and whisper into his ear, "Sire, remember the Athenians." Because why just enjoy your dessert when you can actively cultivate a burning, petty grudge for years on end? Darius sent a massive fleet across the Aegean Sea, packed with thousands of soldiers who were highly trained, professionally equipped, and thoroughly convinced they were going to roll over the Greek locals like a corporate steamroller. They landed at Marathon because it was flat and perfect for their cavalry. The Athenians, meanwhile, panicked. They realized they were severely outnumbered, so they sent a runner named Phidippides to sprint a staggering 150 miles to Sparta to beg for help. He ran for 2 days straight, arrived in Sparta completely exhausted, and delivered his desperate plea. The Spartans, who prided themselves on being the most terrifying military machine in the ancient world, listened calmly, checked their calendars, and essentially said, "Yeah, we'd love to help, but we're actually in the middle of a religious festival right now, and marching to war before the full moon is a major vibe check. Best of luck, though." Of course they did. Because why let an existential threat to your entire culture interrupt a good festival? So the Athenians were left completely on their own, standing on the hills overlooking the plain of Marathon, watching the Persians unpack their tents. The Greek general in charge was a man named Miltiades, and Miltiades had a very specific advantage. He had actually served in the Persian army years earlier as a mercenary, so he knew exactly how their corporate hierarchy worked. He knew the Persians always put their best, most elite troops right in the center of their line, while their weak, conscripted allies were placed on the wings. Miltiades looked at his heavily armored hoplites, who were sweating profusely in their massive bronze helmets, and decided to do something completely counterintuitive. He intentionally thinned out his own center, making it incredibly weak, while stacking his flanks with his heaviest, most aggressive warriors. When the battle began, the Greeks didn't just walk forward. They did something the Persians had never seen before. They ran. They sprinted down the hill across the entire mile of open plain, entirely because they wanted to close the distance before the legendary Persian archers could turn them into human pincushions. The Persians looked at these crazy Greeks sprinting at them without any cavalry or archers of their own, and honestly thought they were witnessing a collective psychological breakdown. The Persian center easily smashed through the weak Greek center, exactly as Miltiades expected. But while the Persians were busy celebrating their breakthrough in the middle, the heavy Greek flanks swung inward like a giant pair of bronze nutcrackers, trapping the elite Persian forces in a horrific crowd. The battle dissolved into an absolute logistical nightmare for the Persians, who forgot how to swim as they ran back to their boats through the marshes. The Greek victory was absolute, and a poor runner had to sprint 26 miles back to Athens to shout that they had won, before immediately collapsing and dying from sheer exhaustion. It was a massive win for democracy, but a terrible day for ancient cardio. Let's gently drift away from the bloody marshes of Greece and float forward a few centuries to look at another clash that entirely reshaped the ancient world. We are visiting the year 216 BCE in the sun-baked plains of southern Italy, near a small town called Cana. Here, the Roman Republic which was rapidly becoming the dominant bully of the Mediterranean, faced off against a single, deeply dedicated military genius from Carthage named Hannibal Barca. Hannibal had spent his entire youth swearing a literal blood oath to his father that he would one day destroy Rome. And he was doing a spectacular job of it. He had already marched an entire army, including dozens of highly confused North African war elephants, over the freezing, treacherous peaks of the Alps, completely defying every law of ancient logistics just to surprise the Romans in their own backyard. By the time Hannibal reached Cannae, the Roman Senate was so thoroughly fed up with this one-eyed Carthaginian general wandering around their countryside that they decided to build the biggest army Rome had ever seen. They gathered roughly 86,000 soldiers, a massive, heavy wall of iron and shields designed to simply walk forward and crush Hannibal by sheer numbers. But Rome had a fundamental flaw in its constitutional design. They didn't have a single commander-in-chief. Instead, they had two consuls who shared command of the army, rotating who was in charge every single day. The two consuls were Lucius Aemilius Paulus, who was cautious, intelligent, and wanted to avoid a pitched battle, and Gaius Terentius Varro, who was arrogant, aggressive, and had a severe lack of tactical patience. Hannibal, being a master psychologist, simply checked his watch, figured out which day Varro was in charge, and chose that exact morning to offer battle. Hannibal lined up his men in an unusual crescent shape that bulged out toward the massive Roman army. His center was made of his lightest, least reliable Iberian and Gaulish troops, while his elite African veterans were held back on the sides. When Varro ordered the massive Roman meat grinder to advance, the Roman legions smashed into the bulging Carthaginian center. Hannibal's center didn't break. Instead, it slowly and deliberately retreated, bowing backward under the immense Roman pressure. Varro looked at this and thought he was winning the greatest victory in Roman history. So he kept pushing more and more men into the center, crowding his soldiers so tightly together that they could no longer even draw their swords. That was exactly when Hannibal's trap snapped shut. The crescent shape had now inverted completely, wrapping around the Romans, while Hannibal's elite cavalry swept around the back, closing the circle. The Roman army was completely surrounded by a smaller force, trapped in a dense, terrifying crowd where it took the Carthaginians nearly the entire day to systematically eliminate almost 70,000 Roman soldiers. It remains the deadliest single day of combat in Western history, all because one Roman consul wanted a quick victory to boost his political career back home. Paulus died in the dust. Varro somehow managed to gallop away to safety, and the Roman Republic sank into a state of absolute, paralyzed grief, proving that numbers mean absolutely nothing when your leadership rotates like a bad shift schedule. Let's leave the horrific dust of Cana behind and float forward in time, crossing the Mediterranean once more to watch the final collapse of an entire era. We are visiting the year 31 BCE, off the stormy western coast of Greece, at the Battle of Actium. This battle marks the official end of the Roman Republic and the birth of the absolute Roman Empire. But at its core, Actium was a deeply personal, incredibly messy soap opera involving three people who simply had too much money, too many ships, and an absolute surplus of emotional drama. On one side, you had Octavian, the young, sickly, but terrifyingly calculated adopted son of Julius Caesar, who was backed by his brilliant best friend and admiral, Marcus Agrippa. On the other side, you had Mark Antony, Caesar's former general, who was a loud, hard-drinking warrior who had completely fallen under the spell of Cleopatra, the brilliant and fabulously wealthy queen of Egypt. Antony and Cleopatra had spent the last few years in Alexandria, living like absolute gods, throwing lavish parties, and slowly alienating the entire Roman Senate, who viewed Antony as a man who had lost his Roman identity to an Eastern queen. Octavian launched a massive propaganda campaign, convincing Rome that Antony was going to move the capital of the world to Egypt. Eventually, the Cold War turned hot, and the two massive fleets met at Actium. Antony had massive, towering warships armed with catapults, while Agrippa commanded smaller, agile vessels that could dart around the floating fortresses. The battle was a chaotic, slow-motion tangle of wooden ships crashing into one another under a blazing sun. But the most bizarre part of the entire engagement happened right in the middle of the fighting. Cleopatra was watching the battle from her own personal squadron of 60 luxurious Egyptian warships held in reserve. As the lines became tangled and the outcome looked uncertain, Cleopatra suddenly panicked. Instead of sending her ships to help Antony, she ordered her fleet to hoist their sails and glide right through the middle of the battle, heading straight back to Egypt. Antony, looking out from his flagship, saw his girlfriend sailing away. He completely forgot that he was a legendary Roman general in the middle of a world-changing battle, abandoned his men, jumped onto a small, fast boat, and rowed frantically after her, leaving his massive fleet to be systematically destroyed and captured by Agrippa. It was arguably the most spectacular romantic blunder in military history. Antony and Cleopatra eventually ended their own lives in Alexandria, and Octavian returned to Rome to become Augustus, the very first emperor of Rome, turning a republic into an autocracy, all because a general couldn't bear to be left behind by a queen. Let's gently float away from the sunny Mediterranean and cross the rugged mountains and forests of Europe, heading into the misty, wet fields of 7th century England. We are pausing our journey for a moment to take a deep, slow breath, letting the weight of these ancient empires drift away as we prepare to look into the dark medieval woods. We find ourselves now in the year 1066 on a steep, muddy hill just outside of Hastings, England. This is the moment where the entire trajectory of the English language, culture, and monarchy was completely reset by a combination of extreme exhaustion, a fake rumor, and a very lucky arrow. The two men at the center of this disaster were King Harold Godwinson, the newly crowned Anglo-Saxon King of England, and William, the Duke of Normandy, who history would later remember as William the Conqueror, though at the time he was mostly known for being intensely ruthless and very determined to take what he believed was his. Poor Harold Godwinson had arguably the worst year of any monarch in history. Just weeks before William landed on the southern coast of England with a massive army of Norman knights, another massive invasion had landed in the north. A fleet of hardcore Viking warriors led by Harald Hardrada, the last great Viking king. Harold Godwinson had to march his Anglo-Saxon army hundreds of miles north, fight a brutal, bloody battle at Stamford Bridge, completely destroy the Viking threat, and then, the very next day, receive word that William had landed in the south. Harold had to turn his exhausted, bleeding army right around and march them all the way back down the length of England without a single day of rest. By the time they reached the hill at Hastings, the Anglo-Saxons were so thoroughly spent they could barely hold their heavy wooden shields. Harold lined his men up at the top of the hill, forming a dense, interlocking shield wall that looked completely impenetrable. William's legendary Norman cavalry charged up the steep slope over and over again, but they couldn't break through the solid wall of Saxon axes and shields. The battle dragged on for hours, becoming a slow, agonizing stalemate. At one point, panic broke out through the Norman lines because a rumor spread that Duke William had been killed in the fighting. The Norman left flank began to break and retreat down the hill in absolute terror. The Anglo-Saxons, seeing their enemies flee, made a monumental tactical mistake. They broke their perfect shield wall and ran down the hill to chase the retreating Normans, eager for plunder. Duke William, who was very much alive, lifted his helmet so his men could see his face, rallied his troops, and turned his cavalry around, completely wiping out the disorganized Saxons who had left the safety of the hilltop. William realized that faking a retreat worked beautifully, so he ordered his men to do it intentionally 2 more times. The Saxons fell for it every single time, because why learn from history when you can repeat it 20 minutes later? The final blow came when King Harold was struck directly in the eye by a stray Norman arrow. According to popular legend and the famous Bayeux Tapestry. With their king dead and their shield wall dissolved, the Anglo-Saxons broke, and William marched on to London to crown himself King of England on Christmas Day. He spent the next few years systematically replacing the entire English aristocracy with French-speaking Normans, which is why today English has so many fancy French words for food, and why the British royal family tree took a very sharp, very permanent turn toward the continent. Let's leave the muddy hills of Hastings and travel east, across the vast, endless grasslands of Central Asia, to look at a battle that opened the doors to the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen. We are visiting the year 1221, at the Battle of the Indus River, where Genghis Khan and his highly disciplined Mongol horse archers completely dismantled the wealthy, powerful Khwarezmian Empire. Now, the Khwarezmian Empire, which covered modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, really brought this disaster upon themselves through a level of diplomatic arrogance that is almost painful to read about. A few years earlier, Genghis Khan didn't actually want to conquer them. He wanted to establish a peaceful trade route. So he sent a caravan of 500 camels packed with gold, silk, and jade, along with 3 ambassadors. The local Khwarezmian governor, a man named Inalchuq, looked at this incredibly wealthy trade caravan, decided he wanted the gold for himself, arrested the merchants, and executed them. When Genghis Khan heard about this, he remained surprisingly calm and sent 3 more ambassadors to the Shah, demanding that Inalchuq be punished. The Shah responded by shaving the beards off the ambassadors and sending one of their heads back to Genghis. This was arguably the single worst foreign policy decision in human history. Genghis Khan stopped everything he was doing, gathered roughly 100,000 horse archers, and descended upon the Khwarezmian Empire like an apocalyptic storm. By the time we get to the Indus River, the young Prince Jalal al-Din was making a desperate final stand with his remaining forces, backed against the wide, rushing waters of the river. The Mongols fought with their usual terrifying, mechanical precision. They didn't rely on brute force. They relied on absolute coordination, whistling arrows that acted like radio commands, and a complete lack of military ego. Jalal al-Din fought bravely, but his lines were systematically surrounded and cut to pieces by the Mongol flanks. Realizing everything was lost, the young prince did something incredibly dramatic. He mounted his favorite war horse, charged through the Mongol line, and forced his horse to leap off a towering cliff directly into the raging Indus River, swimming across to the other side under a hail of Mongol arrows. Genghis Khan was reportedly so impressed by the sheer theatricality of the escape that he ordered his archers to stop shooting, turned to his sons, and said, "A son like this should be born to a father." But while Genghis appreciated the drama, his armies still completely wiped the Khwarezmian Empire off the map, destroying their grand irrigation systems and turning their ancient, wealthy cities into empty fields. This battle cemented the Mongol presence in the heart of Asia, creating a massive, secure trade network that allowed ideas, gunpowder, and eventually the Black Plague to slide effortlessly from one side of the globe to the other. Let's float forward a couple of centuries and move toward the grandest, most heavily fortified city in the medieval world, Constantinople. We are looking at the year 1453 and the siege that officially brought an end to the final remnant of the ancient Roman Empire. Constantinople had stood for over 1,000 years as a glorious Christian bastion, surviving dozens of sieges because it possessed the legendary Theodosian walls, a massive, triple-layered system of stone and brick that was widely considered completely indestructible. The man who decided to challenge these walls was Sultan Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire, who was just 21 years old and intensely obsessed with capturing the ancient city to cement his own legacy. The reigning Byzantine emperor was Constantine XI, who ruled over an empire that had shrunk down to basically just the city itself and a few surrounding fields. Constantine's entire defense force consisted of only about 7,000 men, while Maimed showed up with an army of over 80,000, backed by a secret weapon that completely changed the nature of warfare. Massive, super-sized gunpowder cannons. Maimed hired a Hungarian engineer named Urban, who built a monstrous bronze cannon named the Basilica, which was over 27 feet long and could fire a 1,200-pound stone ball over a mile. It took 60 oxen and 200 men just to drag this single cannon to the city walls. Every time it fired, the ground shook, and it took several hours just to reload it. But it slowly and surely began to turn the indestructible ancient walls into piles of gravel. Despite the constant bombardment, the Byzantine defenders worked through the night, using barrels, dirt, and stone to patch the holes. The siege dragged on for weeks, and Maimed grew increasingly frustrated. The Christians had blocked the entrance to the Golden Horn, the city's harbor, with a massive iron chain stretched across the water, preventing the Ottoman navy from attacking the weaker sea walls. Maimed looked at this iron chain and decided that if he couldn't sail through it, he would simply go around it. Over the course of a single night, Maimed had his workers construct a wooden road over the hills behind the city, greased the tracks with massive amounts of animal fat, and used teams of oxen and thousands of soldiers to literally drag 70 full-sized Ottoman warships over the dry land up the hills and drop them down into the harbor behind the Christian chain. When the defenders woke up the next morning and looked out at the harbor, they saw an entire enemy fleet floating in their backyard, which must have been an absolute psychological meltdown of a moment. The final assault came on May 29th. The defenders fought with the absolute desperation of men who knew their civilization was ending. But the tragedy of the final breach was surprisingly mundane. According to historical accounts, someone had accidentally left a small postern gate called the Kirkeporta unlocked at the base of one of the towers. A small group of Ottoman soldiers noticed the open door, slipped inside, climbed to the top of the wall, and raised the Ottoman flag. Panic spread like wildfire through the Christian lines. The defense collapsed, and Emperor Constantine Xi reportedly tore off his imperial purple robes, threw himself into the thickest part of the fighting as a common soldier, and was never seen again. Constantinople became the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. The ancient Silk Road routes were blocked to European merchants. and a bunch of traumatized Greek scholars fled to Italy with their ancient books, accidentally sparking the Renaissance. All because someone forgot to lock the back door. Let's take another deep, slow breath as we prepare to leave the medieval world behind, letting the echoes of falling walls fade away as we slide into the smoky, gunpowder-filled air of the early modern era. Our journey brings us now to the year 1588, into the choppy, cold waters of the English Channel. We are looking at the defeat of the Spanish Armada. This was supposed to be the grand, glorious climax of King Philip II of Spain's lifelong crusade to bring England back under the control of the Catholic Church. Philip was a man who spent his entire life sitting in a tiny, freezing stone office inside the El Escorial Palace near Madrid, micromanaging his global empire to a degree that was practically pathological. He spent months reviewing every single piece of paper regarding the Armada, down to the exact number of biscuits packed onto each ship and the daily wood allowance for the carpenters. Of course he did. Because why trust your professional admirals when you can run a naval invasion from a landlocked mountain monastery? Philip gathered an invincible armada of 130 massive, heavily armed galleons, packed with thousands of seasoned Spanish soldiers. But right before the fleet sailed, his legendary Grand Admiral, the Marquis of Santa Cruz, suddenly died of exhaustion, likely from reading Philip's endless letters. Instead of replacing him with another experienced sailor, Philip appointed the Duke of Medina Sidonia, a man who was incredibly wealthy, very aristocratic, and openly admitted that he knew absolutely nothing about naval warfare, hated the ocean, and suffered from severe seasickness. Medina Sidonia actually begged the king to let him stay home, writing that he was completely unqualified. But Philip told him to trust in God and get on the boat. You have to feel for the poor guy, throwing up over the side of his flagship while trying to coordinate a global invasion. The plan was for the Armada to sail up the Channel, pick up a massive Spanish army waiting in the Netherlands under the command of the Duke of Parma, and escort them across to England. Queen Elizabeth I of England, meanwhile, had her own fleet of smaller, faster ships commanded by Lord Howard and the legendary pirate-turned-admiral Sir Francis Drake. According to English lore, when the sails of the Armada were first spotted on the horizon, Drake was in the middle of a game of lawn bowls. Instead of panicking, he calmly stated that there was plenty of time to finish the game and beat the Spaniards later, which is peak British confidence, though in reality, he was likely just waiting for the tide to turn so his ships could actually leave the harbor. The Spanish fleet sailed in a perfect, tight crescent formation that the English couldn't break. Medina Sidonia managed to guide the fleet all the way to Calais, where they anchored, waiting for Parma's army to arrive. But the logistics completely fell apart. Parma's men weren't ready. They were blocked by Dutch rebels in shallow boats, and the communication between the two Spanish leaders took days because they had to send letters via tiny rowboats. Sensing the Spanish vulnerability, the English waited for the dead of night, took 8 of their older ships, packed them to the brim with gunpowder, pitch, and tar, set them completely on fire, and let the wind carry them directly into the crowded Spanish fleet. The sight of 8 floating bonfires drifting toward them in the dark caused an absolute psychological meltdown through the armada. The Spanish captains panicked, cut their heavy iron anchors, and scattered into the dark, stormy night, breaking their perfect formation. The next day, the agile English ships closed in, riddling the disorganized Spanish galleons with cannonballs. Medina Sidonia was forced to abandon the invasion, but because the English blocked the channel, the only way home was to sail all the way around the rugged, rocky coasts of Scotland and Ireland. A massive, horrific Arctic storm descended, smashing dozens of anchorless Spanish ships against the Irish cliffs. Less than half the fleet made it back to Spain, and Philip II reportedly looked out his office window and dryly noted that he had sent his fleet to fight against men, not the wind and the waves. Let's float across the North Sea and forward into the year 1709, to a frozen, muddy landscape in Ukraine, at the Battle of Poltava. This is the moment where the Kingdom of Sweden, which was currently a terrifying military superpower, lost its entire empire to Russia, all because a young king had an incredibly stubborn streak and a very infected foot. The 2 men at the center of this cold northern tragedy were King Charles XII of Sweden and Tsar Peter the Great of Russia. Charles XII was a prodigy. He took the throne at 15, and by 18, he was fighting the Great Northern War against a coalition of every neighbor who thought they could take advantage of a teenager. Charles shocked the world by being a military savant. He wore a simple soldier's uniform, slept on the bare ground, and routinely defeated armies 3 times his size with his hyper-aggressive Swedish infantry, who were trained to charge directly into gunfire without flinching. Charles was so successful that he decided to do what every overconfident European general does eventually. He marched his army directly into the heart of Russia to depose Peter the Great. Peter the Great realized he couldn't beat Charles in a fair fight, so he utilized the classic Russian defensive strategy. He retreated, burning his own villages, crops, and fields as he went, leaving the Swedes with absolutely nothing to eat. Then, the winter of 1708 arrived. It wasn't just a normal cold snap. It was the Great Frost, widely considered the coldest European winter in 500 years. It was so brutal that birds reportedly froze midair and dropped dead to the ground. The Swedish army, far from home and lacking winter gear, saw their numbers cut in half by sheer hypothermia. By the summer of 1709, Charles had dragged his starving, shivering remnants to the town of Poltava. And that was when his luck completely ran out. During a minor skirmish a few days before the big battle, a stray bullet struck Charles directly in the heel, shattering the bones in his foot. The wound became deeply infected, and the legendary warrior king who always led from the front was suddenly struck down with a raging fever, completely bedridden and unable to stand. When the main battle began on July 8th, the Swedish army was in an absolute state of organizational confusion. Their king was being carried around on a wooden litter borne by 2 horses, unable to communicate effectively. The replacement commanders loathed one another and spent the morning arguing over orders. Peter the Great, meanwhile, had built a massive system of redoubts, fortified wooden earthworks, and lined them with over 100 modern cannons. The brave Swedish infantry charged forward into the smoke, but without Charles's tactical genius to guide them, they were systematically funneled into killing zones and torn to pieces by Russian artillery. The defeat was total. Charles XII had to be bundled onto a horse and smuggled across the border into the Ottoman Empire, where he spent the next 5 years living as an awkward royal house guest, while Peter the Great used his new dominance to build St. Petersburg and declare Russia a major European empire. Let's leave the cold plains of Ukraine and slide forward into the glorious, golden sunset of the early 19th century. We are visiting the year 1805 in the rolling hills of Moravia at the Battle of Austerlitz. This is widely considered the absolute masterpiece of Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who possessed an ego the size of a continent and a tactical mind that operated like a chess computer. At Austerlitz, Napoleon faced off against the combined forces of the Russian Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, led by Tsar Alexander I and Emperor Francis II. The Allies had a larger army, and they occupied the Pratzen Heights, a commanding, highly defensive set of hills overlooking the battlefield. Napoleon looked at this situation and decided to play a game of absolute psychological manipulation. He wanted the Allies to attack him, so he intentionally made his own right flank look incredibly weak, practically begging the Austro-Russian forces to descend from their perfect hills and crush it. Tsar Alexander, who was young, arrogant, and eager to be seen as a great military hero, fell for the trap hook, line, and sinker. His seasoned old general, Mikhail Kutuzov, warned him that Napoleon was likely up to something sketchy. But the Tsar ignored him and ordered the bulk of his army to abandon the Pratzen Heights and rush down to smash Napoleon's weak right wing. But Napoleon had a secret. He had ordered one of his most reliable commanders, Marshal Devout, to march his division 48 miles in just 48 hours through the mud to reinforce that exact weak flank right as the battle began. Devout's men arrived completely exhausted, but held the line with absolute determination. While the Allies were pouring more and more men into Napoleon's right wing, the center of their line on top of the Pratzen Heights became completely empty. That was the exact moment Napoleon unveiled his real plan. Through the heavy morning mist, the sun suddenly broke out, an event history remembers as the Son of Austerlitz. And Napoleon ordered Marshal Soult's hidden divisions to charge directly up the center of the hills. The French forces burst through the mist, seized the heights, and split the Allied army completely in two. The battle dissolved into an absolute rout. At one point, thousands of retreating Russian soldiers tried to escape across a series of frozen lakes. Napoleon ordered his artillery to aim not at the men, but at the ice itself, shattering the frozen sheets and sending his enemies sliding into the freezing water. The victory was so complete that it brought a definitive end to the Holy Roman Empire, which had existed for 1,000 years, and left Napoleon as the undisputed master of continental Europe. All because two emperors couldn't resist a target that looked just a bit too easy to be true. Let's take a final, deep, relaxing breath as we prepare to step into the final act of our journey, moving toward the vast industrial landscapes of the modern era, where the scale of human conflict shifted into something almost incomprehensible. Our long journey brings us finally into the muddy, blood-soaked fields of the 20th century. But first, we must pause briefly in the year 1815 at a small crossroads just south of Brussels. We are looking at the Battle of Waterloo. This was the definitive final chapter for Napoleon Bonaparte, who had recently escaped from his island exile on Elba, marched back into France, and convinced the entire army to join him again, because why settle for a quiet retirement when you can try to conquer Europe one last time? At Waterloo, Napoleon was facing a coalition of British, Dutch, and German forces led by Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington. Wellington was a remarkably stiff, intensely disciplined British aristocrat who famously described his own soldiers as the scum of the earth, but admitted they made magnificent fighters when properly fed and ordered around. Wellington chose a perfect defensive position along a low ridge, hiding the bulk of his infantry behind the crest of the hill to shield them from Napoleon's legendary artillery. The battle was supposed to begin early in the morning, but a massive torrential downpour had occurred the night before, turning the Belgian fields into a swamp of deep, sticky mud. Napoleon looked at the mud and decided to delay his grand attack for several hours, waiting for the ground to dry so his heavy cannons could actually roll into position without sinking to their axles. This delay was arguably the most critical mistake of his life. It gave the Prussian army, under the command of the 72-year-old Marshal Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher, precious time to march through the mud to join Wellington. Blücher was an absolute character. He had been severely defeated by Napoleon just days earlier, but he had promised Wellington he would show up, even if he had to be tied to his horse. Blücher also reportedly suffered from severe mental delusions, including a firm belief that he had been pregnant with an elephant sired by a French soldier. But despite the psychological quirks, the old man knew exactly how to march toward the sound of gunfire. While Napoleon waited for the mud to dry, his tactical execution became uncharacteristically sloppy. He was suffering from a severe case of hemorrhoids that day, which prevented him from riding his horse effectively and left him stuck in a chair, deeply irritable and lacking his usual sharp focus. His second-in-command, Marshal Ney, launched a massive, unsupported cavalry charge of 10,000 French horsemen directly up Wellington's hill, completely misinterpreting a minor tactical movement as a British retreat. Wellington's infantry quickly formed dense, bristling defensive squares, and the French cavalry simply washed around them like water around rocks, achieving absolutely nothing at the cost of thousands of horses. Late in the afternoon, just as Napoleon prepared to send his elite, undefeated Imperial Guard up the hill to finish Wellington, the mud-splattered Prussians finally burst out of the woods on his right flank. The French army found itself caught between two completely unyielding forces. The Imperial Guard broke and retreated for the first time in history. Panic swept through the ranks, and Napoleon's empire dissolved into the mud for good. He was packed off to a tiny, miserable rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, named St. Helena, where he spent his final years complaining about the damp weather and the quality of his British guards. A bleak end for a man who had once rewritten the borders of the world. Let's float forward a century, leaving the colorful uniforms and black powder smoke behind, to enter a world of industrial steel, barbed wire, and absolute administrative horror. We are visiting the year 1914, at the First Battle of the Marne, just 30 miles outside of Paris. This is the moment where the opening campaigns of World War I ground to a sudden, permanent halt, setting the stage for 4 years of miserable trench warfare. The German Empire had entered the war with a highly detailed, 40-year-old corporate strategy known as the Schlieffen Plan. The goal was simple: swing a massive army through Belgium, circle around Paris like a giant sickle, completely knock France out of the war in exactly 42 days, and then turn around via train to deal with Russia. The plan relied on absolute, clockwork precision. But the man in charge of executing it was General Helmuth von Moltke, a deeply stressed, intensely nervous individual who lacked the confidence of his famous uncle. Moltke spent the opening weeks of the war sitting in a remote headquarters hundreds of miles behind the lines, receiving conflicting reports and slowly suffering a nervous breakdown as his lines became overextended. The German armies marched for weeks through the summer heat, outrunning their own supply wagons and arriving near the Marne River completely exhausted, with their boots worn down to the skin and their horses dropping dead from fatigue. The French commander, General Joseph Joffre, was the complete opposite of Moltke. Joffre was a massive, incredibly round man who refused to let an international crisis interrupt his schedule. No matter how bad the news was, Joffre insisted on eating a massive, multi-course lunch at exactly noon every day and going to bed precisely at 10:00 p.m. His absolute, immovable calm acts like an anchor for the panicked French government. Joffre noticed that as the German armies rushed forward, a massive 30-mile gap had opened up between their two main forces near the Marne. He ordered a massive, desperate counterattack. The French needed to rush every available soldier to the front line immediately to exploit the opening. In a legendary moment of civic improvisation, the military governor of Paris requisitioned every single civilian taxicab in the city, roughly 600 Renault taxis. The drivers turned off their meters, packed their back seats with muddy French infantrymen, and drove them directly to the battlefield in a long, honking convoy through the night. It was the first fully motorized mass transport of troops in history. The joint Franco-British assault drove right into the German gap, forcing the exhausted invaders to retreat back to the Aisne River. The Schlieffen Plan had failed. The war of movement was over, and both sides began digging into the dirt to protect themselves from the terrifying modern machine guns and artillery. They dug trenches that eventually stretched from Switzerland to the North Sea, turning Western Europe into a static, multi-year monument to industrial slaughter, all because one side ran out of supplies and the other side utilized their taxi service. Let's move toward the final, most titanic clash of our journey, floating into the frozen, ruined streets of an industrial city on the banks of the Volga River. We are looking at the Battle of Stalingrad, which dragged on from August 1942 to February 1943. This was the absolute turning point of World War II, a clash of two totalitarian systems defined by an intense, deeply personal hatred between Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. Hitler had launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union, and by 1942, his armies were driving toward the oil fields of the Caucasus. But Hitler became completely sidetracked by the city of Stalingrad, entirely because it bore his rival's name. He became pathologically obsessed with capturing it, ordering his Sixth Army, under the command of General Friedrich Paulus, to take the city at all costs. Stalin, likewise, ordered that the city be defended to the absolute last breath, issuing his famous Order No. At 227, not a step back. The battle dissolved into a horrific, close-quarters nightmare known to the German soldiers as Rattenkrieg, or rat warfare. The massive German tanks and aircraft were completely useless inside the ruined, bombed-out concrete skeletons of the city. The fighting was done room by room, floor by floor, inside factories, sewers, and basements. a grain elevator, or a single pile of. Bricks would change hands 10 times in a single day. The Soviet defenders kept their front lines incredibly close to the Germans, often just a few yards away, a tactic known as hugging the enemy, which prevented the German artillery from shelling them without killing their own men. While the elite German Sixth Army was bogged down in this endless city labyrinth, the Soviet High Command, led by Marshal Georgy Zhukov, was quietly planning a massive counteroffensive named Operation Uranus. Zhukov realized that the German flanks outside the city were being guarded by poorly equipped Romanian, Hungarian, and Italian allies who lacked anti-tank weapons. In November, under the cover of a massive blizzard, the Soviet army launched a giant pincer movement, smashing through the weak flanks and completely surrounding the 250,000 men of the German Sixth Army inside the freezing ruins of Stalingrad. General Paulus begged Hitler to let him launch a desperate breakout attempt before the pocket froze solid. But Hitler, sitting in his comfortable mountain retreat, refused. He was promised by his Air Force chief, Hermann Goering, that the Luftwaffe could easily fly in all the food, fuel, and ammunition the army needed. This was an absolute logistical fantasy. The army needed 800 tons of supplies a day, and the planes could barely manage 90. The surrounded soldiers were left to starve in the Russian winter, living on a soup made from frozen horse meat and sawdust, with temperatures dropping to minus 30 degrees. In a final stroke of cruel irony, Hitler promoted Paulus to the rank of field marshal, reminding him that no German field marshal had ever surrendered alive, essentially hinting that he should take his own life for the glory of the state. Paulus looked at the promotion, dryly noted that he had no intention of shooting himself for a Bohemian corporal, and surrendered to the Soviet forces the very next day. It was the first time an entire German field army was completely captured, shattering the myth of Nazi invincibility and turning the tide of the entire war toward Berlin. Let's take a final, deep, long breath as we bring our sleepy journey through these world-shaping battles to a peaceful close. The grand strategies, the thunderous artillery, and the frantic decisions of emperors and generals have all quieted down, fading away into the soft, gray pages of old textbooks. The battlefields are quiet now, covered in gentle green grass and quiet morning mist, and the long nights of human conflict have finally settled into the deep, still dark of the past. Sleep well, and let the echoes of history drift completely away.